Well, I guess you could call this an iterative version of my All the Mods series. I'm going back to my 2022 Yamaha R7, and you know, you just can't leave it alone completely. So I'll show you a couple of the additional mods I've made. One was out of necessity. The other two were certainly optional, but also preference. So we'll start with these up front. The mirrors. These are not the very expensive models that you might see, but they are machined aluminum. They fold flush. They have an incredible look when they are folded. I'm not expecting like downforce that's going to help me with riding because I don't ride that fast. But these are amazingly good mirrors. Probably, I would have to say, quality Chinesium. And what's interesting is, in looking at the mirror itself, it's not that hard to use. I've heard a number of people say that these are, you know, difficult to see behind, blah blah blah. Well, the reality is you have to get used to, when you're riding, you have to just lift your elbows up a little bit so the mirror can, basically you can see the mirror underneath your arm along your side, and you actually have plenty of view. So it's a technique thing. You have to get used to that change in behavior when you use your mirrors. They're not just there all the time, but they are blocked by your arms, so you just have to lift your arms up. You see underneath them. They're great. So that's one mod. These, again, you can get through Amazon. They weren't horrifically expensive, but they certainly weren't as expensive as another brand that does cost a lot more. But this is really well made, machined, CNC machined aluminum. The next thing I got was these brake levers. They're adjustable brake levers from the brand is Womet, W-O-M-E-T .tech, Womet Tech, and I got them through TST Industries. I've gotten a few other things from them. They were actually pretty easy to put on, but I will give you a couple of hints. So they fit really well for replacing the original stock levers that come on the R7. And I'll just show you real quick the thing that I learned. Here are the stock levers. And what you need to be aware of is there's a spacer. Let me see if I can do this. There's a spacer here and a spacer here that needs to come out and be inserted into the new levers in order for them to not wobble around when you tighten up the fasteners. On the clutch lever, the spacer fell right out. On the brake lever, it was not easy to get out, and actually what I had to do, I'll show you here. This is, for those of you that don't know, it's just a steel punch. And I actually put this in, I have a, you call it a soft face in the vise, in my vise. And then I took this thing and it kind of rested right here on the spacer. And I took my ball peen hammer and gave it a few taps. It started to move, and then it's like, okay, good, we're good to go. I was a little nervous at first, punched it all the way out, and it was fine. And then reinserted that into the brake lever here. You have to obviously get this guy. This requires a little bit of just gentle manipulation to get this out of the part that holds it on the original. But once you do all that, it's pretty straightforward. You know, these are mostly 10mm bolts down here on each side. They're, I'd say a 1 beer install. You know, relatively easy. I like having the clearance. I went through and did some adjustments. This, I love that it's closer for the brake. And for the clutch, I did have to adjust the tension just a bit here and here so that it fit with what I liked. I do like the fact that they're not so long now like the originals, that they're actually touching my my lever guards. So again, good upgrade. I'll put a link to TST Industries website in the description. Okay, so the last thing I did, I replaced the mount for my Garmin. And if you watch my previous video on this R7, you'll know that I had a Pro Bolt, I believe was the brand, a hollow steering stem bolt put on here so that I could access the cavity for the steering stem. Well, with the original ram mount, it looks like this guy. There's a wedge piece. This is the part I didn't use. There's a smaller wedge piece because the opening there is about 13.5, 14 millimeters. So you cut your wedge to size, you mount it on there, and then this acts as a it squishes it up and then expands it into the cavity. Well, in theory, that's supposed to work really great, but two things. One is it never sat flush because of this ridge, I guess you could call it, and you can see my finger is actually kind of shiny from this because the rubber itself, because of the engine heat coming up from below, actually started to melt. It was turning into a gummy sort of goo, and probably every couple of months I would have to tighten up the top here to keep this thing from wobbling around. And at some point, I guess it just decided it was done. I was going to go out on a ride and this thing was just wobbling all over the place once I mounted my Garmin on it. And I finally stopped, took the Garmin off, and this thing just popped right out, and it looked like, black slime in there. So anyway, that's the original ram mount that I will have to say I'm incredibly disappointed in the caliber of how it works. So this one, I will put a link. I got it on Amazon, and I just did a search on hollow steering stem mounts for like Garmin or something like that. They're easy to find. This one cost about 20 bucks. It's CNC machined aluminum, comes from China, and it's mainly just this piece and the ball, and then inside it's actually an expandable metal. It's like almost a serrated metal. Looks like a cheese grater a little bit, a very fine cheese grater. And when you tighten the nut down here underneath, it pulls a wedge up into the cheese grater pieces, expands them, and it's like whack, it locks in. It's not going to move. It's so solid. I mean, I could mount pounds and pounds of weight on that thing. So that was definitely a required replacement, and definitely an improvement. And the way it's positioned, I don't have the Garmin on here, but now what's really nice is I was able to actually, with this flush mounted one, it's positioned a lot better. So the Garmin sits here, my dash TFT display is there, and it actually is much better aligned for me visually. So those are just a couple of the improvements I made. I'm not looking to spend money, but sometimes you just do, and some of it's ergonomics, like the controls. Sometimes it's necessity, like my ram mount failing. And then the mirrors, well, that's just because I really like these mirrors. They look awesome, and they're very usable. Surprisingly, you just have to adjust your mindset about how you use them. Anyway, hope you enjoyed it. I won't say I won't make any more mods to my R7. We'll see. Could be another version of all the mods for this one at some point in the future. Anyway, thanks for watching.